Michael sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, the glow of his phone screen the only light in the room. It was nearly midnight, and he scrolled mindlessly, fighting the restlessness that had been eating at him all week. Ever since his mother's funeral, the silence in the apartment felt different, heavier, oppressive. Even the faint hum of the refrigerator sounded distant, like the whole world had stepped a few inches away from him. He rubbed his tired eyes and let out a slow breath, ready to set the phone down and force himself to sleep. That's when the screen lit up with an incoming call. The name froze him in place. Mom. His heart stopped. His throat tightened. He stared at the glowing name, waiting for it to disappear, for the phone to correct itself and admit to some glitch. But the call kept buzzing, insistent, rattling against the wood of the table. His mother had been dead for 7 days. He had lowered her coffin into the ground with his own hands. He had watched the dirt pile over her casket until the polished wood was gone. He had heard the prayers. He had said goodbye, and now she was calling him. The phone's vibration filled the silence like a heartbeat. Michael whispered, "No, this isn't real," but his hand reached out anyway, trembling as he slid his thumb across the screen. He lifted the phone to his ear. "Hello?" At first there was nothing, just static, faint and distant, like wind across a bad radio signal. He almost hung up. Then he heard it. A voice, "Michael, honey, come home. It's getting dark." He felt the blood drain from his face. His knees nearly gave out. It was her voice. His mother's voice, gentle, familiar, filled with the warmth that had comforted him as a child. Except now it felt wrong, impossible. His mother wasn't alive to speak those words. "Mom?" His voice cracked, barely a whisper. There was no reply, just silence. The line went dead. The apartment seemed to close in on him. Michael dropped the phone onto the couch as though it had burned him. His breath came fast, shallow, uneven. No explanation made sense. Not a glitch, not a prank. He knew that voice too well. He stayed awake until the first gray light of dawn seeped through his blinds. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant car horn outside made him jump. He was certain someone was in the apartment with him, watching, waiting. By morning, the world seemed cruelly normal. Neighbors left for work, kids rode bikes down the street, birds chirped in the trees. Michael sat at his kitchen table staring into a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. He felt as if the shadows of last night had followed him into daylight, curling in the corners of his vision. He forced himself to go to work. The office was buzzing with keyboards, phones, chatter. He answered a few emails, nodded along to conversations he didn't hear, pretended to be fine. But every time his phone lit up with a notification, his chest clenched. He was terrified of seeing that name again. That evening, against his better judgment, Michael drove to the cemetery. He parked his car by the wrought iron gate and walked the gravel path toward his mother's grave. The sky was painted in bruised shades of purple and gray as the sun sank lower. The air smelled faintly of damp earth. When he reached her grave, he froze. The flowers he had left days ago were wilted, their petals crumbling into the soil. A thin line of disturbed dirt traced across the mound, as if something had shifted beneath it. Michael knelt down, his hands shaking. He placed fresh lilies by the headstone and whispered, "Mom, if that was you." "Please don't do this. Please rest." His voice broke. "I can't handle this. I can't lose you twice." The wind picked up suddenly, cold and sharp, and with it came a scent so familiar it made his chest ache. Lavender, the perfume she always wore. Michael's eyes filled with tears. He clenched the grass in his fists, forcing himself to breathe, and then he heard it. A voice, soft, close, right behind him. "Michael." He spun around. No one was there. The cemetery was empty, but when he turned back toward the grave, the soil had shifted again. Just slightly, as though something beneath it had pressed upward. Michael stumbled back, his pulse thundering in his ears. He didn't wait. He ran to his car, his breath ragged, his chest tight. He didn't look back as he drove away, the rearview mirror reflecting only the darkening cemetery fading into the distance. That night, when the clock struck midnight, his phone rang again, and the screen read, "Mom." Michael stared at the phone as it rang. His breath caught in his throat. The name glowed across the screen, "Mom." He couldn't move. He couldn't think. His entire body went rigid, as though answering or ignoring the call would both damn him in different ways. The ringing filled the apartment like a siren. Finally, with a trembling hand, he picked up. "Hello?" This time there was no static. Just her voice, clear, familiar. "Michael, why haven't you come home yet?" His heart twisted painfully. His apartment was his home, but when she said the word, he knew she meant somewhere else. Somewhere he didn't want to go. "Mom?" His voice cracked. You're gone. You can't be calling me. You're gone." A silence followed, long enough to make him think the call had dropped. Then softly she whispered, "I miss you, honey. Don't leave me here alone. Come home." Michael's hand shook so violently the phone nearly slipped from his grip. "Where are you?" he whispered. The voice on the other end cracked with static, then came back, lower, almost distorted. "You know where I am." The line went dead. Michael stood frozen in the darkness of his apartment, his phone still pressed to his ear. His breath came in shallow bursts, his skin clammy with sweat. He wanted to believe it was some cruel trick, that someone was spoofing her number, mimicking her voice. But the way she spoke, the way she said his name, that wasn't something a stranger could fake. He sat on the couch, gripping his phone until his knuckles turned white. Minutes stretched into hours, and eventually exhaustion won over fear. He drifted into a restless sleep, curled up under the thin blanket, the phone clutched tight against his chest. When he woke, pale daylight was creeping through the blinds. For a moment he thought he'd dreamed it all. But then he looked at his call log. The call was real. Duration, 1 minute, 12 seconds. Michael shut his eyes and pressed his palms against them. He couldn't let this continue. He needed answers. That afternoon he drove to his sister's house. Claire greeted him at the door, surprised to see him without warning. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun. "Michael? You okay?" He hesitated before answering. "Can we talk?" She nodded and led him inside. They sat at the kitchen table, mugs of coffee steaming between them. For a moment he just stared at the surface of his drink, trying to decide if he could say it out loud without sounding insane. Finally, he whispered, "I got a call from Mom." Claire froze, her hand tightening around the handle of her mug. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Michael leaned forward. "I know how it sounds, but it was her voice. She said she missed me. She told me to come home." Claire shook her head quickly, blinking back tears. "Michael, don't do this to yourself. She's gone. You're grieving, that's all. Sometimes our brains, they play tricks on us." "No." His voice was sharp, desperate. "It wasn't in my head. Look." He shoved his phone across the table. The call log glowed on the screen, her number staring back at them. Claire's face drained of color. She pushed the phone back like it was poison. "That's not possible," she whispered. Michael leaned in closer. "Have you gotten calls too?" She didn't answer right away. Her hands trembled as she set the mug down. Finally, she whispered, 2 nights ago. "I didn't want to tell you. I thought if I ignored it, it would stop." Michael's stomach dropped. "What did she say?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. She said, "Why did you leave me in the dark?" The kitchen was suddenly silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. Neither of them moved, afraid to break whatever fragile barrier kept the air from shattering around them. Michael finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "This isn't just grief. Something's happening. Something real." Claire wiped her eyes quickly and shook her head. "We shouldn't talk about this. If we keep giving it power, it'll keep happening." But Michael wasn't convinced. That night, he sat awake in his apartment, the lights all on, his phone on the table in front of him. Midnight came and went. The phone stayed silent. He almost felt relief. At 12:37 a.m., the phone lit up. "Mom." Michael's breath caught. He didn't answer right away. The phone rang again. And again. Relentless. He finally picked up. "Michael." Her voice was different this time. Not warm, not soft. It was sharp, broken, layered, as though more than one voice spoke at once. "Come home." His throat went dry. "Where is home?" he whispered, a long pause. Then a whisper so cold it made his skin crawl. "Underneath." The call ended. Michael sat there in the silence, his entire body trembling. He felt a pressure in the room, heavy and suffocating, like someone was standing just behind him. Slowly he turned his head toward the darkened corner of the room. For a split second he saw her, his mother, standing there, her nightgown torn and dirt-stained, her eyes wide, her skin pale with soil clinging to her hair. She reached out a hand to him, her lips moving soundlessly before her image flickered and vanished into the dark. Michael's scream tore through the empty apartment. Michael didn't sleep after that night. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, pale, dirt-stained, her lips whispering words he couldn't hear. He left every light in the apartment on, but the shadows seemed thicker, as if they pressed harder against the walls, hungry to seep through. By morning, his eyes were bloodshot, his hands unsteady. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone. The call log glared back at him. Mom, 12:37 a.m., duration, 58 seconds. He wanted to delete it, erase the evidence, pretend it hadn't happened. But some sick part of him couldn't. He needed proof. Proof that he wasn't losing his mind. Proof that she was reaching out. He called Claire again, his voice hoarse. It happened again. On the other end of the line, his sister was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Me too." Michael felt his stomach knot. What did she say this time? She didn't. She didn't sound like her, Claire whispered. She said my name, but it was wrong, like it was coming from somewhere deep, too deep. And then she just laughed. Not her laugh, something else. Michael pressed his palm against his forehead, trying to steady his breath. She said underneath to me. Claire's voice cracked. Underneath what? I don't know, Michael whispered. But he did. Deep down, he knew exactly what it meant. That evening, against every instinct screaming at him, Michael drove back to the cemetery. The sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of red and orange. The air smelled of wet earth, and the trees swayed gently in the breeze. He walked the gravel path to his mother's grave, each step heavier than the last. When he reached it, he stopped cold. The soil had shifted again. Fresh dirt scattered over the grass as if something beneath had pushed upward. His heart pounded in his chest. He knelt, running his fingers over the earth. The ground was cold, damp. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Mom, please, please rest. Don't do this to me. I don't understand what you want." The wind rose suddenly, whipping through the trees, howling like a cry. His breath caught as the scent of lavender filled the air again, her perfume unmistakable. Then, faint but clear, a voice rose from the earth beneath his knees. "Michael." He scrambled backward, his shoes slipping in the grass. His chest heaved, and his eyes darted across the empty cemetery. No one was there, but he had heard it. It came from the ground itself. He ran, didn't look back, didn't stop until he was in his car with the doors locked and the engine roaring. That night, he sat in his apartment with the curtains drawn tight. Midnight came. He braced himself. The phone rang. He answered on the first ring, his voice shaking. "What do you want from me?" Her voice came through, quiet, almost gentle. "Come home." "Where? Where is home?" he demanded. There was a long pause. Then, in a whisper that chilled his blood, "Where you left me?" Michael's hand trembled. "I didn't leave you. I was there. I buried you. The voice cut him off, growing sharper. "You left me in the dark, alone, cold. Come home." The line went dead. Michael hurled the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall, pieces scattering across the floor. His chest heaved as he gripped his hair with both hands, fighting the urge to scream. The apartment felt suffocating. The shadows stretched too far, like they were reaching for him. And then, from the corner of his eye, he saw movement. He turned. There she was. His mother stood in the hallway, her gown torn and filthy, her skin pale as wax. Her hair hung in damp strands, clotted with soil. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, glowed faintly in the dark. Michael froze. She raised a trembling hand, pointing at him. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, slowly, her jaw stretched wider, wider than it should, until it opened in a silent scream. Her body jerked violently, convulsing, before vanishing into the shadows. Michael stumbled backward, his breath ragged. The lights flickered, buzzing faintly, then steadied again. The hallway was empty. He slid to the floor, shaking uncontrollably. By morning, he was a wreck. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. He called Claire again, his voice trembling. "We have to do something. She's not resting. She's trying to tell us something." Claire's voice was tight with fear. "Michael, stop. We shouldn't listen. Whatever that is, it isn't her. You don't know that. I do," Claire shouted. Her voice cracked. "Because last night she wasn't alone. I heard other voices, deep ones, whispering with hers. That's not Mom. That's something else. Michael gripped the phone tighter. Then what the hell do we do? There was silence on the line. Then Claire whispered, "We go back to the cemetery. Together." Michael closed his eyes, dread curling in his stomach. He knew she was right, but he also knew that going back meant stepping closer to whatever waited for them. Underneath, Michael picked Claire up just after dusk. The air was heavy, the kind of stillness that felt like the world was holding its breath. Neither of them spoke much during the drive. The only sound was the hum of the tires on the road and the occasional rasp of Michael's shallow breaths. Claire sat rigid in the passenger seat, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse. "I don't know why I agreed to this," she muttered finally. "I don't know what we think we're going to find." "We need answers," Michael said, his voice tight. "If this is really happening to both of us, we can't just ignore it." Claire glanced at him, her eyes haunted. "What if it's not her? What if it's something pretending to be her?" Michael's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "Then I want to know why." They pulled up to the cemetery gates. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a bruised purple. The iron gate creaked as Michael pushed it open. They walked side by side down the gravel path, their footsteps crunching loudly in the silence. When they reached their mother's grave, both of them stopped short. The soil was disturbed again. More than before. It looked freshly turned, like someone had dug from below and then pushed the earth back into place. Claire's breath hitched. "Jesus Christ." Michael knelt down, his hands brushing the dirt. It was cold, damp, softer than it should have been. His stomach turned. "We shouldn't be here," Claire whispered. She glanced around nervously at the darkening cemetery. "It's not safe." Before Michael could answer, the air shifted. A chill swept over them, carrying with it the faint scent of lavender. Claire froze. "Do you smell that?" Michael nodded slowly, his chest tightening. "Yeah, Mom's perfume." The ground beneath the grave shifted. Just slightly, enough to send both of them stumbling back. And then they heard it. A voice, faint, muffled, rising from beneath the earth. Michael. "Claire!" Claire clapped her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. "No, no, no, no." Michael's pulse pounded in his ears. He took a shaky step closer. "Mom?" he whispered. The voice came again, clearer this time. "It's so dark, so cold." "Don't leave me here." Claire grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Michael, stop!" "That's not her. It can't be." But he couldn't move. The sound of her voice pulled at him, tearing at the deepest parts of him. It was her. It had to be. The soil shifted again, more violently this time. Clumps of dirt rolled down the mound, the earth trembling beneath their feet. And then, faintly, they heard something else. Whispers. Low. Countless. Twisting through the air like 100 voices speaking at once. Claire's grip tightened painfully on his arm. "Do you hear that?" Michael's throat went dry. "Yeah." The whispers grew louder, overlapping, impossible to understand. The ground heaved once, then stilled. Silence fell. Claire's face was pale, her eyes glistening with tears. "We need to leave. Right now." Michael hesitated, torn between terror and the desperate pull of his mother's voice. Finally he nodded. They turned and hurried back to the car, neither daring to look back at the grave. The drive home was silent, both of them too shaken to speak. When Michael dropped Claire off, she gripped his hand tightly. "Promise me you won't go back there alone." Michael hesitated, then nodded. "I promise." But he knew it was a lie. That night, alone in his apartment, he sat on the couch with the broken pieces of his phone scattered on the floor. Midnight came. He stared at the clock, waiting, dreading. At 12:04 a.m., the phone lit up, even shattered, even without a battery, it glowed. Mom Michael's breath caught. He didn't pick it up, couldn't. But the phone answered itself. Her voice filled the room, clear and cold. "Why did you leave me, Michael? Why won't you come home?" He pressed his hands over his ears, shaking his head violently. "You're not real. You're not her." The voice deepened, layered with others. "If I'm not her, then who buried me? Who put me underneath?" The lights in the apartment flickered violently, buzzing. The air grew heavy, pressing down on him like a weight. He gasped for breath, his vision tunneling, and then, from the hallway, he saw movement. His mother, crawling on hands and knees, her body jerking unnaturally, her head twisted at an impossible angle. Her mouth opened wide, wider, until it split her face in half. Michael screamed, stumbling backward against the wall. The lights went out. In the dark, her voice whispered right next to his ear, "Come home." Michael didn't remember falling asleep, but when he opened his eyes, he was sprawled on the living room floor. The phone pieces were gone. His first thought was that he had imagined everything. The call, the crawling figure, the whisper in his ear. But when he looked at the wall opposite him, the truth punched the breath from his lungs, scratched into the paint. Long, jagged marks spelled out 2 words, "Come home." He staggered to his feet, his whole body trembling. His mind screamed to run, to leave the apartment, to check himself into a hospital if he had to. But somewhere deeper, in that place where grief never left, he felt the pull again. He picked up his car keys. By the time he reached Claire's house, dawn was bleeding into the sky. She opened the door, bleary-eyed, her robe clutched around her. "Michael? Jesus. It's 6 in the morning." He pushed past her into the living room, pacing like a man on the edge. "It's real. It's not just phone calls." "She was here, Claire. She came into my apartment." Claire slammed the door shut, her face pale. "Stop. Don't say that. I'm telling you the truth." He spun toward her, his eyes wide, bloodshot. "She was there. I heard her. I saw her. She scratched the walls. She said, come home." Claire stared at him, her lips pressed into a trembling line. "Michael, if what you're saying is true, then whatever this is, it's not Mom." He sank into a chair, his hands gripping his hair. "I don't care what it is." "I need to know why it's happening." "Why us?" Claire hesitated, then sat across from him. "Do you remember what Dad used to say about the house in Maple Hollow?" Michael frowned, lifting his head. "That old place in the woods?" "Yeah, he called it cursed." "Not cursed," Claire whispered. "He said Mom used to hear voices there. Before we were born. That's why they moved." Michael blinked at her, stunned. "You never told me that. I thought it was just Dad being drunk and dramatic." "But what if it wasn't?" The name Maple Hollow hung in the air like smoke neither of them could clear. By noon, they were driving north, into the wooded outskirts where the old family property still stood. The house had been abandoned for years, left to rot. Michael had vague memories of playing in the yard as a child, of the way the trees seemed to crowd too close to the house, their branches like skeletal arms. When they reached it, Claire stopped the car at the edge of the long, overgrown driveway. The house was still there, sagging and weather-worn, its windows black and empty. Michael stepped out slowly, gravel crunching beneath his shoes. The air felt wrong here, thicker, heavier, as if it carried a weight. Inside, the house smelled of mildew and dust. The wallpaper peeled in strips, and the floor groaned under their steps. They moved carefully from room to room until they reached the basement door. Michael's stomach twisted. The wood was scratched, gouged with marks too deep to be from time alone. And carved into the center was the same phrase from his apartment wall. "Come home." Claire's breath hitched, her hand flying to her mouth. "Michael, we shouldn't be here." But Michael reached for the handle anyway. The door creaked open, releasing a cold draft that carried the faint smell of earth and rot. They descended slowly, their footsteps echoing. The basement was small, the stone walls damp, the air heavy. In the far corner was a hole, a deep, jagged hole in the ground, as if someone had been digging downward for years. Michael's chest constricted. "What the hell is this?" Claire shook her head, backing away. "I don't want to know." But Michael was drawn closer. He peered into the hole, the darkness so complete it seemed to swallow the light. And then, faintly, he heard it, his mother's voice. "Michael, help me!" His knees nearly buckled. He stumbled back, his breath ragged. Claire grabbed his arm, tears streaming down her face. "That's not her." "It's not. We need to go, Michael, please." But the voice came again, louder, sharper. "Michael, come down." "Come home." The ground trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. From the hole, the whispers rose again, countless voices, murmuring, chanting, overlapping until the sound filled the basement like a storm. Claire screamed, pulling him toward the stairs. They bolted upward, slamming the basement door shut behind them. Outside, they gasped for air, both trembling violently. Michael stared back at the house, his hands shaking. "It's under there. Whatever it is, it's under that house." Claire grabbed his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "If you go back there, you'll never come out. Promise me, Michael. Promise me you won't go back." He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could answer, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out slowly. Unknown number. His heart stopped. The screen lit up with 2 words. I'm home. And then, from the car radio, though it wasn't even on, his mother's voice filled the silence. Michael. Claire. Come home. The static swallowed the sound. But the message was clear. They weren't free of her. Not here, not anywhere. Michael couldn't sleep. He sat in Claire's guest room, staring at the ceiling while the red digits of the clock bled into the dark. The phone lay on the nightstand, face down, but he felt its presence like a weight pressing into his skull. Every second he waited for it to buzz, to light up with that name again. Claire had locked her door across the hall. He couldn't blame her. The fear in her eyes earlier hadn't just been for him, it was for herself too. At 3:17 a.m. the phone lit up. No sound, no vibration, just light spilling across the table. Michael turned his head slowly, every muscle stiff. The screen glowed with a single message. Come home. His throat went dry. He didn't touch it, but the words burned into his mind. He pressed his fists against his temples, whispering to himself, It's not real. It's not her. It's not her. But then the phone buzzed again, and this time a picture appeared. It was his apartment. The photo was taken from inside, facing the couch, and in the center of the frame sat a figure, pale, thin, hair hanging in matted strands across its face. Its hands were folded in its lap like it was waiting for him. Michael's blood turned to ice. His chest heaved, but something inside him shifted. Terror mixed with a strange twisted pull. The longer he looked, the more he felt it. The need to go back. To end this. To face whatever it was. By dawn he was gone. He left Claire a note. I have to finish this. Don't follow me. The drive back to his apartment felt unreal. The world outside his car hazy, dreamlike. He parked, sat in silence for a long time, then forced himself to step out. The building loomed quiet. Too quiet. No neighbors, no sounds of morning routines. The silence of the grave. When he unlocked his door, the air that rushed out was freezing, like he'd opened a walk-in freezer. His breath came out in clouds. Inside, the apartment looked the same, at first. But when he turned toward the couch, his stomach lurched. The cushions were torn open, the stuffing ripped out in long claw marks. The wall above it was carved with words, deep and jagged. Welcome home. The sound of water dripping reached his ears, slow, steady, from the kitchen. He turned, his steps heavy. The sink was empty. The faucet wasn't leaking, but from beneath the drain, deep in the pipes, he heard it. Something moving. Something wet. He backed away, but then the lights flickered. The overhead bulb buzzed and died, leaving only the gray light of morning through the blinds. That's when he heard her. Michael. He spun around. His mother stood in the hallway, but it wasn't her. Her skin was gray, sagging, mottled with dark veins. Her eyes were sunken pits that reflected no light. Her jaw hung too loose, her lips drawn back to reveal broken, blackened teeth. She tilted her head, her neck creaking. Why won't you come home? Michael stumbled back, his chest seizing with panic. You're not her. You're not my mother. She smiled, or tried to. The skin around her mouth cracked as it stretched. I've been waiting. I've been calling. Didn't you hear me? The lights flickered again, and in that flash, she wasn't alone. The hallway behind her crawled with figures. Dozens of them, their bodies bent, their hands clawing at the walls, their faces hidden by hair and shadow. Whispers filled the air, 100 voices overlapping. Michael's knees nearly buckled. He bolted for the door, but when he reached it, it slammed shut on its own, the lock clicking into place. The phone in his pocket buzzed violently. He yanked it out. The screen lit up with a video call request. From Mom, his hands shook as he accepted it, unable to stop himself. The screen filled with darkness at first. Then slowly, the camera adjusted. It showed the basement hole. The one under the Maple Hollow house. The camera tilted downward into the pit. And from the black depths, 2 pale hands reached upward, clawing at the soil. The phone slipped from his grasp and shattered on the floor. The thing wearing his mother's face stepped closer. Its breath reeked of rot. Come home, Michael. Come back to where I'm waiting. The walls groaned. The floor vibrated beneath his feet. From every shadow, hands began to crawl outward. Thin, gray, broken hands reaching for him. Michael did the only thing his body would allow. He screamed. Michael's scream tore through the apartment, but it was drowned out by the chorus of whispers swelling from the walls. The hands stretched farther, pulling themselves out of the darkness. Figures emerged, gray, hollow-eyed, their bodies twisted as if broken and stitched back together. They shuffled toward him, murmuring in voices that overlapped like a storm of echoes. "Come home, come home, come home." Michael lunged for the window, grabbing the edge of the blinds, but when he yanked them open, it wasn't daylight outside. Not the city, not even the street. Beyond the glass was nothing but black soil, pressed close as if the window had been buried beneath the ground. He staggered back, his chest heaving, his skin clammy with sweat. The door behind him rattled. The lock clicked, and slowly it creaked open. Cold air poured in, smelling of earth and rot. Beyond the doorway wasn't the hallway of his building. It was the basement. The Maple Hollow basement. Michael froze, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes told him. His apartment had become a doorway. A trap. The thing wearing his mother's face tilted its head, smiling with cracked lips. "There you are. I knew you'd come." The gray figures swarmed forward, their fingers brushing against his arms, his legs. He fought, kicking, shoving, tearing himself free, but they were endless. Hands closed around his wrists and ankles like iron grips. His body was lifted, dragged across the floor, pulled toward the open door. He screamed until his throat felt raw, clawing at the frame, but his nails only tore away, leaving streaks of blood. The last thing he saw before being pulled into the darkness was the words scrawled across the apartment wall in dripping black letters. "Welcome home." Then the door slammed shut behind him. He fell hard onto damp soil, the air choking with the smell of decay. He was back in the Maple Hollow basement, standing at the edge of the pit. The hole yawned open, wider now, the shadows inside moving like liquid. Claire's voice screamed in his head, her warning, her plea not to return. But it was too late. From the pit, whispers rose like steam. Thousands of voices, calling his name, overlapping, urging him downward. "Michael! Michael! Michael!" He shook his head violently, tears streaming down his face. "No, you're not her."
"My mother's gone!"
The shadows in the hole writhed, and slowly a figure began to climb out. Pale hands, cracked nails clawing into the dirt. A head followed, hair matted with soil, eyes black as voids. And then another figure, and another. They kept coming, one after another, pulling themselves into the basement like a tide of the dead. Michael stumbled back until his shoulders hit the stone wall. His chest heaved, his heart slamming against his ribs. He was trapped. The first figure dragged itself fully out of the hole and stood upright. It was his mother's face, but wrong, stretched too thin, sagging, her eyes nothing but black sockets. She raised her arms, reaching for him. "Michael, my boy, you finally came home." Behind her, the others whispered, their mouths moving in perfect unison. "Stay with us, forever." Michael's mind splintered between terror and grief. A part of him longed to step forward, to fall into her arms, to believe, even for a second, that his mother had come back for him. But the smell of rot, the black void of her eyes, the way the shadows bent around her like a living shroud, he knew the truth. This wasn't his mother. He pressed himself harder against the wall, shaking his head. I won't go with you." Her smile cracked wider, splitting her cheeks. "You already have." The ground beneath him gave way. The soil split apart, and Michael plunged into the pit. Darkness swallowed him, thick and suffocating, alive. He clawed upward, but there was nothing to grab, only shifting soil that swallowed his hands. The whispers turned into screams, voices howling in his ears, some calling his name, others chanting in languages he couldn't understand. Falling, spinning, drowning, and then silence. Michael opened his eyes. He was standing in his childhood home. The living room was warm, filled with the smell of lavender and roasted chicken. Sunlight spilled through the windows. His mother stood in the kitchen, smiling, alive. "Michael," she said, her voice soft, kind, everything he remembered. "Dinner's ready. Come sit," his breath caught. His legs trembled. "Mom?" She nodded, her eyes full of love. "Yes, sweetheart. You're home now." For a moment, he let himself believe. He stepped toward her, tears blurring his vision. But then his gaze drifted to the window. Beyond the glass wasn't daylight. It was dirt. Packed soil pressed against the panes, blotting out everything. He looked back at her. Her smile didn't change, but her eyes did. The warmth drained away. leaving pits of blackness. Her mouth opened too wide, stretching into an impossible grin. "Forever," she whispered. The walls melted, the furniture dissolved, and the shadows surged forward. Michael screamed, but the darkness poured into his mouth, his nose, his eyes, until there was nothing left. In the basement of Maple Hollow, the soil shifted once more, sealing the pit shut. The house stood silent, empty, as if nothing had ever stirred beneath it, and Michael was home. For Eve, Claire hadn't heard from Michael in 2 days. His car wasn't at her house, and the note he left, "I have to finish this. Don't follow me," sat on her kitchen counter like a curse. She tried calling, texting, even driving by his apartment. No sign of him. His neighbors hadn't seen him either. It was as if he'd vanished. On the third morning, Claire's gut told her what her heart already feared. He'd gone back to Maple Hollow. She drove north under a gray, endless sky. The road to the old house twisted through trees that leaned too close, their branches rattling against each other like bones. By the time she pulled into the overgrown driveway, her hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The house looked worse than before. Windows shattered, porch sagging, roof half collapsed. And yet it breathed. She could feel it. The air around it pulsed like a living thing. "Michael," she whispered, her voice breaking. Inside, the stench was stronger. Damp earth, mold, something dead. Claire covered her mouth with her sleeve and forced herself forward. The wallpaper hung like rotting skin. The floor bowed beneath her feet. She knew where to go. The basement. The door was still marked with gouges, the words "Come home" etched deep into the wood. Her hands trembled as she reached for the handle. It creaked open, the air rushing up cold and foul. Step by step, she descended. The basement was dark, but her flashlight cut through it, revealing stone walls slick with moisture. And in the center, the pit. But it wasn't just a hole anymore. It was enormous, stretching wide. The soil around it collapsed into a black crater. The earth seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting, as if the pit itself had lungs. "Michael?" she called, her voice trembling. For a moment, only silence answered. Then faintly from deep below, she heard it. "Claire." Her heart leapt into her throat. She dropped to her knees at the edge, shining the flashlight downward. Nothing but shifting soil and darkness. "Michael, hold on, I'll get you out." She reached her hand into the dark. Something took it, not gently, not desperately. It seized her wrist with crushing force, icy fingers digging into her skin. She screamed, trying to pull back, but it yanked, dragging her closer to the edge. From the pit, the whispers rose. Hundreds of voices, chanting, hissing. And then she saw them. Faces pushing up through the soil, gray and twisted, mouths moving in unison. "Come home. Come home. Come home." Claire fought, kicking at the dirt, but the grip only tightened. Tears streamed down her face. "Michael, if you're in there, fight it. Don't let it take you." The voices grew louder, almost deafening. The soil erupted as hands clawed upward, pale and broken, reaching for her. She felt the edge giving way beneath her knees. Then, clear above the chaos, she heard his voice. "Claire." "Go." Her eyes widened. "Michael, go." His voice was raw, torn, desperate. "Don't let it have you too." With a surge of strength, she tore her wrist free, stumbling backward. The grip left bruises like black fingerprints on her skin. The pit screamed. Not the voices, the earth itself. A sound like metal tearing, like bones breaking, like the sky itself splitting. The faces in the soil writhed, mouths open in silent agony, then collapsed inward as the hole began to seal itself, swallowing the whispers. Claire scrambled to her feet, running up the stairs as the basement shook. The door slammed behind her, nearly catching her heel. She bolted through the house, out the front door, into the daylight. Behind her, Maple Hollow groaned. The walls buckled, the roof sagged, and with a roar the entire house collapsed into itself, vanishing into the earth. The ground split and swallowed it whole, leaving only a barren crater where the house had stood. Claire fell to her knees, sobbing. The silence that followed was suffocating. She knew Michael was gone. Gone but not lost. His voice had saved her. He'd chosen to stay behind, to let the thing have him so it wouldn't take her too. She pressed her forehead to the dirt, whispering, "I'm sorry. I love you. I'll never forget you." The wind stirred, carrying the faintest scent of lavender. For a moment she thought she heard him again. Softer now, far away. "Go home, Claire." She stood, wiping her tears. and walked back to her car. As she drove away, the trees closed behind her, and the crater disappeared into the forest. The world seemed normal again. But Claire knew better. She knew what had been waiting beneath that house. And she knew it wasn't finished, because when she stopped for gas an hour later, her phone buzzed. A new message from Michael. Just got home. Her hands went cold. She stared at the screen, her heart pounding in her ears. Slowly, with dread sinking into her bones, she raised her eyes to the rearview mirror. In the back seat, the shadows shifted, and something moved. Ali's vision blurred as he stumbled out of the apartment, the phone still clutched in his trembling hand. The night air felt heavier than usual, thick with something unseen but pressing. The streets were unusually quiet, as though the city itself had stopped breathing. His footsteps echoed louder than they should have, and every shadow seemed to stretch toward him, hungry and alive. He turned a corner, heading for the subway station, desperate to get away, but found himself back at his own building's entrance. The lights above the door flickered, buzzing faintly, and in that flicker he thought he saw his mother standing inside the lobby, her face pale, her lips moving, but no sound escaping. His chest tightened. He knew she was dead. He had been at her funeral. Yet here she was, gesturing to him, as though urging him inside. Ali's instincts screamed at him to run, yet his legs betrayed him, carrying him forward. As he pushed the door open, the lobby stretched impossibly long, its walls lined with mirrors that hadn't been there before. Each reflection showed a different version of him, some younger, some older, some with faces twisted in fear, others staring blankly back. The further he walked, the more distorted they became, their eyes glowing faintly, their mouths moving in whispers he couldn't quite hear. His phone buzzed again. With shaking hands, he raised it to his ear. Static filled the line at first, then a voice. Not his mother this time, but something colder, deeper, like a growl beneath words. You answered. Now you belong. The mirrors around him cracked all at once, the sound deafening. From each shard, hands reached out, skeletal and cold, clawing toward him. He tried to scream, but his voice caught in his throat. The reflection closest to him grinned, its lips moving in perfect sync with the voice on the phone. Come home, Ali. The lights went out. The darkness pressed in so thick that Ali could barely breathe. His fingers scraped along the wall, searching for something solid, something real. But the surface beneath his touch felt wrong, too soft, too warm, as if he were pressing against flesh instead of painted concrete. A low hum vibrated through the air, not mechanical, but alive, resonating deep in his bones. His phone screen lit up suddenly, casting a weak glow. The name flashing across it made his stomach drop. Mom. He froze, his thumb hovering. Every rational part of his brain screamed at him not to answer, but his body moved on its own, pressing the green icon. Ali, the voice whispered, almost tender. You're lost. Come home. He bit down hard on his lip until the metallic taste of blood filled his mouth. His mother's voice had been warm, soothing. This voice was wrong, like a stranger wearing her skin. No, he croaked. You're not her. She's gone. She's gone. The hallway ahead flickered with dim light, revealing doors, row after row, stretching endlessly. Each door bore a number, but the sequence made no sense. 12, 34, 7, 98, 3. One door rattled violently as though something inside was desperate to get out. He stumbled back, heart pounding, but his feet carried him forward anyway. Halfway down the hall, one door stood slightly ajar. A faint glow leaked from the crack, warm and golden, like the light from his childhood home. Against all reason, his chest tightened with longing. He hadn't seen that light since before the hospital, before the machines, before his mother's eyes had closed forever. The phone hissed in his ear. Open it. Ali's hand shook as he pushed the door. Inside was a small living room, familiar, impossibly familiar. The faded couch with the stitched armrest, the old wooden cabinet that smelled faintly of polish, the family portraits on the wall. And in the middle of it, sitting in her favorite chair, was his mother. Her hands folded neatly in her lap, her face serene. She looked up and smiled. Beta, you're late, she said, her voice soft, warm, exactly as he remembered. Ali's throat tightened. His knees nearly buckled. This isn't real, he whispered. You're not here. I buried you. Her smile widened, but the corners of her eyes didn't crinkle like they used to. It was a mask stretched too perfectly. The light in the room flickered once, and for a split second he saw the truth. Her skin pale and waxy, her eyes sunken, her lips cracked and dark. But when the light steadied, she was whole again. "Sit with me," she said, patting the chair beside her. Ali's phone slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor. The call was still active, and from the speaker came faint whispers, hundreds of voices overlapping, chanting something he couldn't understand. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. If he sat, if he stayed, he knew he might never leave this place. Behind him the hallway groaned, the mirrors along the wall trembling as though straining to contain something eager to break free. He had to choose, stay with the apparition of his mother or step back into the endless, shifting nightmare outside. Ali's breath came in shallow bursts. The golden light from the room painted everything in soft tones, pulling at him, luring him like a moth to flame. His mother's eyes, so calm, so steady, were locked onto his. "Sit, Ali," she said again, her hand extended, palm open. For a moment, he wanted to give in, to collapse into that embrace, to let the nightmare dissolve into something familiar. But a shiver rippled through him, an instinct older than thought. He stepped back, her expression faltered. The warmth in her smile drained, leaving something sharper, colder. Her voice deepened, each word trembling with static. "You don't turn away from your mother." The door slammed shut, the golden light extinguished. Ali staggered into darkness. He spun, but the hallway behind him was gone. He was standing in a vast empty space. The floor stretched endlessly in every direction, gleaming like polished obsidian, reflecting his distorted figure. Then he wasn't alone. Shapes began to emerge in the darkness. People. Figures stepping forward, their faces vague, melting and reforming like wax. They carried phones in their hands, screens glowing faint blue. Every screen displayed the same name: Mom. Ali's phone buzzed violently where it had fallen on the floor. The name glowed again: Mom. The chorus of figures raised their devices to their ears. In perfect unison, they whispered, "Come home." Ali backed away, his pulse roaring in his ears. He picked up his phone with trembling fingers and, against all reason, answered again. This time the voice wasn't soft. It was guttural, broken, scraping through the line like nails on steel. "You left me. You buried me. Now you'll stay with me." The crowd of faceless figures advanced, their whispers swelling to a deafening roar. Ali ran. His footsteps echoed endlessly on the glassy floor, but the figures followed, multiplying, stretching out of the darkness as if the void itself was giving birth to them. Up ahead, a doorway appeared, an old splintered wooden door, standing alone without walls to hold it. He hurled himself toward it, yanked it open and fell through. He landed hard on his knees. The world around him shifted again. This time he was outside, standing in the middle of a deserted suburban street. The sky overhead was an unnatural shade of gray, heavy and low, as if pressing down on the houses. Every front yard looked identical: neatly trimmed grass, white fences, mailboxes with names he didn't recognize. But every house had one thing in common. In each window, a woman stood, staring out. Pale, motionless, their faces blurred, but all of them wore the same expression, the same smile his mother had worn. A voice carried across the empty street. "Ali." He turned. At the end of the street stood a woman in a faded blue dress, the exact one his mother used to wear when she cooked Sunday dinners. She raised her hand and beckoned him. The phone in his pocket buzzed again. "Mom is calling." Ali's hands shook. His mind screamed for him to run the other way, but his legs betrayed him, pulling him toward the figure at the end of the street. Every window lit up at once, and the silent women inside began to step forward. Pressing their palms against the glass, Ali stumbled, caught between the pull of the call and the terror of what surrounded him. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. It wouldn't let him go.